Hi friends, welcome. Today I want to talk about how we can create more minimalistic street photos. Very quickly, before I get into the topic, I want to talk about the fact that the format of this video is going to be a little bit different. I plan to not cut this video. There shall be no cuts. And there are a couple of reasons for this. One reason is because I want to be able to edit these videos quicker so that I can share them with you guys quicker. Thus, I am uploading more consistently. That makes me very excited. My dream would be to get up 2 videos a week. We'll see how it goes. Another thing is this will allow me to become better at articulating things, become more well-spoken. And that's something that I'm always very excited about. I'm always looking for ways to do that. I'm very passionate about communication. And so this will help me not only communicate with you guys in these videos, but in my life in general. So you guys get to come along for that journey. So with all of that said, let's talk about what it is that makes a minimalistic photo and how we can go about making a minimalistic photo. I think it's important to define our terms. So if we look at this photo, what we're looking at is something that I would not define as a minimalistic photo. This is an organized photo, but not a minimalistic photo. It's organized because there's a clear hierarchy of things and we have a clear focus. But it's not minimalistic because there's a lot of things going on, lots of different shapes, lots of different colors. If we look at this photo, however, this is a minimalistic photo. It is also very organized, but there's a lot less going on in terms of complexity. Now, something I want to make sure that we differentiate here is the difference between the amount of things in the frame and the complexity of things in the frame. I think what makes a minimalistic photo versus not a minimalistic photo is not the amount of things, but the complexity of those things. And as I move through and as we look at some photos, I'll break that down. You guys will be able to understand exactly what I mean. But what are some methods for achieving minimalistic photos? What are some tips before we start looking at photos? Well, one thing is shooting with a longer focal length. It can be a really good idea if you're trying to achieve more minimalistic photos because it allows you to zero in on something, perhaps from quite far away, use compression, and cut out a lot of clutter. And so a lot of photos that feel very minimalistic in nature, they tend to be that way, partially because somebody is using a longer focal length. Another thing is looking up or down, or in other words, changing your elevation in relation to your subject. So if you want to, maybe you could get up in a parking garage and shoot down on a street, or maybe you can go lower than your subject, shoot up and use the sky as a background. These are great ways to cut out a lot of clutter, thus creating minimalism. Not in your house. You still have to clean, but yeah. Another thing is stark light. So if you have very, very sharp light where things go to shadow pretty dramatically and only certain things are even exposed in the frame, this is a great way to cut out clutter, obviously. This is another good method. Another thing is a clear defined subject. And so if you have a lack of complexity in the scene and a clear defined subject, you're on your way to creating a very well-rounded minimalistic photo. And then another thing is a simple color palette, which I think is a pretty obvious one. And the extreme of this is actually making your photo black and white. But let's look at a couple of different photos by me, and I'm going to look at a couple of different photos by other photographers. This is a photo by me that I would define as a rather minimalistic photo. We have a skater in the Venice Beach skate park bowl section, if you will. And there's a lot of repetition going on here, and that's something that will help establish these type of photos as well. If things are doing the same thing over and over, so if we have these waves on the left and right side, you have that. And I'm pointing down, I'm cutting out the clutter above. There are a lot of skaters poking around, and there's a mountain in the background, and there's some palm trees. Lots of things going on that would completely destroy the sort of dreamy effect of this photo. Here's another one of the same skate park. Same principles at play here. And also I love the waviness of the shadow. Here's one I took more recently. You guys may have seen it in a previous video where we have a guy standing under a light post and stark light, right? One point of light on on the subject, and then there's not much else going on around. And then so we have a fence that is zigzagging, starting from us and moving into the background, but it's only one type of item, right? It's not a fence with 7 different colors on it. It's not a rainbow fence. It's all the same color. It all looks exactly the same, thus a lack of complexity. If we look at this photo, we see the principle that I was getting at a second ago of changing your elevation in relation to the person or the subject that you're shooting. This is a great example of that. Pointing up, the sky's semi blown out, and then we just have the person and the basketball goal. Now, let's talk about a couple of photos created by other human beings and people who have done this well. This is a really interesting example because there actually is a fair bit of things going on in the frame in terms of shapes and I guess really there's different shades of a similar color happening, but the color is so similar that it still maintains that minimalistic quality. If these bricks were all different colors, if the slanted part of the escalator that's closest to us, those bricks, if they were red and in the background was this bluish tealish color, it would move away from that minimalistic quality. But everything is exactly the same, and then we just have a person sort of intruding on that dreamlike kind of in the middle of nowhere environment, if you will. Here's another example of looking up to create something that feels quite dreamy and minimal. I'm trying not to say minimalistic. I chose minimal that time so that I could not say minimalistic. But great example. There's no clutter here. It's just you got a couple of different colors, and the background is just a sky. This is a good example of something that rides the line a little bit. You're starting to introduce a couple more things. We have a person. He's got multiple colors on his clothes. And then we have a roof in the background, which is this sort of reddish beige color. And then we have the blue sky. But I would still say this feels rather minimalistic. But it's riding that barrier. This is a great example of a lot of things in the scene. And what I mean by that is these stripes are things to our eyes. The contrast between the light and dark points are registering as things, but they're exactly the same and exactly the same color. Thus, minimalism. And then finally, we have this photo, which I think is a fantastic example of what I was talking about at the very beginning, which is that you can have an enormous amount of items in a scene. In this case, a bunch of humans. But the complexity is not there. They all look exactly the same. From this distance, they just look like a bunch of head-shaped things, and the color red is pervasive all throughout the photo. And then we have this one group of people who are breaking that up. But I would still say this is a very minimalistic photo because there's a lack of complexity, tremendous amount of people, and more people in this photo that are in most street photos, for sure. But the complexity is very little. Okay, that's it for this one. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to engage below. Please feel free to engage with me on Instagram or on Twitter. You can find me at James the Red. And if you enjoyed this video, you enjoy what I'm up to here, if you hit the like button and/or subscribe, I would really appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate that too. Washing? Thanks for washing me, guys. Goodbye.